token generation with Intangible Virtue, even going so far as a main deck Collective Blessing. And then a lot of the good value token stuff. We have Lingering Souls alongside Midnight Haunting, you know, some ramp with Evans's Pilgrim. Thragtusk is a good value play, and so not really a homogenous Spirit deck, but definitely capitalizing on those kind of synergies. And I feel going into this that Zan is pretty far behind in the matchup. This is exactly the kind of decks that the Humanitator deck preys upon. There's no quick clock, there's no real disruption, at least game one, and no permission. So I think that Brian's very well suited for this matchup.
As we do see Brian kicking off with a Stomping Ground and a Faithless Looting. Cartel Aristocrat is his first discard, and he is really thinking a long time about his second one, and he's going to end up going with, as we're going to see here in a moment, a Temple Garden. He's just going to pass the turn back. So we are underway here in our quarterfinal match. Stay tuned, of course. After this game, we'll be giving away 3 months of premium with our little trivia game. I'm sure we'll ask you a real doozy to be able to earn that.
Zan with a tap Godless Shrine on his first turn.
We're going to see a Farseek here from Brian.
Resolves, and now Brian has to figure out what he wants to go get. Sells on Godless Shrine.
So you can see Brian's deck does have relatively good mana. Farseek's going to help it, along with Grizzly Salvage and Mulch.
Could even fire off a Nephilim next turn if he was feeling so inclined.
Yeah. We might have to name that Nephilim coming shortly.
Blood Crypt for Zan. I believe there is a Farseek in his hand, but no green mana, which is a very bad sign, of course.
I'm just going to pass the turn back.
See if Brian can capitalize on this here. Sunbelt Grove and Huntmaster of the Fells. And we mentioned this a couple of times watching this deck on camera, both in Brian's hand and in Brad's hands. This deck can actually play a kind of a conventional Magic game. It doesn't have to just go full out with the, you know, Burial Rites and comboing out. We see Farseek into Huntmaster of the Fells. This is the same types of draws the decks like Naya and Jund use. And he can use that, he can do that sort of stuff just as well, and then has this very powerful Reanimation Shell as a backup.
We see here from Zan, just no spell yet again. Huntmaster flips into Ravager of the Fells, 2 damage upstairs, and now the pressure is on. And as you said, Patrick, this is just a normal game of Magic here. This is nothing that we haven't seen before.
Right, Zan with a Vault of the Archangel, still no green mana, still no plays. We'll see if we got any follow-up here. Looks like Brian also has a Faithless, an Unburial Rites in hand, so we're going to flashback this Faithless Looting here. Finds a Grizzly Salvage in another land. I would assume that he would want to keep a land to salvage and the salvage itself, so we see him get rid of a land and a Fiend Hunter. Stomping Ground untapped.
We're going to see Grizzly Salvage.
And he's doing this on his main phase here to play a second spell, so he can flip his Huntmaster back over.
We're going to see a Temple Garden, a Fiend Hunter, an Angel of Glorious Rise, a Clifftop Retreat, and a Faithless Looting. So a pretty good Grizzly Salvage here.
Yeah, and with Unburial Rites in hand, I assume, well actually, I guess there's a bunch of different paths he can take here. Just going to take the land. I was going to say he could even take the Angel and then flashback looting or just hit land drops, or, I mean, Brian's got a ton of options afforded to him. Obviously, he's under no pressure, and so he can kind of sculpt whatever game he wants to.
Yeah, Zan's going to draw a card here.
Ooh, an Intangible Virtue.
Yeah, you see the big problem here is that he has no green mana. You see, you're just going to see a concession, as he does have a couple Selesnya Charms and just nothing really going on here.
So sideboard time. This is where, you know, in the Swiss rounds, Brian would have to have a plan kind of ahead of time for how he wants to handle decks with white mana.
Yep.
So the question is, you know, like, how do I hedge against Rest in Peace or Grafdigger's Cage or Purify the Grave, all that sort of stuff. Now with the deck list in front of him, he has full information. So he doesn't necessarily, we saw him in an earlier round where it looked like he took out his Unburial Rites package altogether. because he wasn't quite sure. He was playing against Blue White Red Flash.
Sure.
Didn't know how much graveyard he'd be playing against. He didn't want to lean on it too heavily. Now he gets to see, and seeing only 1 copy of Rest in Peace and 2 Deathrite Shamans, it's possible he can really lean on his graveyard stuff.
Yeah. And that's something that we'll discuss in just a moment for you guys. We are cutting back to the booth very quickly because it is premium giveaway time.
Yeah.
In which we do something very, very easy. We ask you a question.
Not necessarily easy in this case.
Yeah, you have to answer it, and then all you have to do is tweet the answer to hashtag SCG Premium. And what we are going to play is what you would say is America's
favorite game show.
Favorite game? Are you ready, everybody? Because it is time to
name that Nephilim.
Now, Braun-Duin's deck. It's 4 colors.
It's 4 colors. It's missing blue.
It's missing blue.
But it has the other 4 colors.
Yes, it does have red, green, white, and black.
Much like you saw with a Gala Shrine and a Stomping Ground in play.
Yeah. Much like a certain Nephilim. And what do you have to do?
You had to name that Nephilim. So, hashtag SCG Premium. We're gonna, don't worry about answering fast because we just pull one of the random names.
That's correct.
It's not who gets it first.
It's all about getting it right.
And that's actually not easy to do because no one actually knows this off the top of their head.
That's correct. Feel free to Google. It's okay. It's okay. We won't judge you.
Go to Star City Games even.
Because I had to bring it up on my iPhone to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the name of it.
But please, hashtag SCG Premium with the name of the Nephilim corresponding with the colors of Braun-Duin's Human Reanimator deck.
Which, of course, are red, white, black, and green.
Yes.
No blue.
No blue.
No blue for you.
Like a certain iconic, memorable Nephilim. So,
taking a look at Zan's sideboard. I know you have it in front of you. Yeah. Does he have that Rest in Peace type card, Deathrite Shaman, anything?
He has a single Rest in Peace and 2 Deathrite Shamans.
Okay.
So he's not overloaded here. I think, Brian is probably comfortable playing against this level of graveyard hate. Yep. It's probably less than he would anticipate his average white opponent to have.
Okay.
So I don't know how much he wants to hedge off. Like, do you bring in your enchantment removal?
Yep. Which you see 3 copies of Ray Revelation here.
Do you bring it in against 1 copy of, the 1 copy of Rest in Peace? Now, granted, he has Intangible Virtue in his deck as well.
Yep.
So Ray Revelation might just be awesome regardless.
Yeah.
But it is worth noting that, when you're building this deck for the Swiss rounds, you're probably thinking, 2 Rest in Peace, 3 Rest in Peace is what I would expect. And now you're only seeing 1, and so the question is how much of your enchantment rule do you really want to bring in here?
Which is definitely a difficult question, again, because you don't want to dilute. That's the big thing. With this deck is definitely just a finely tuned machine. You don't want to ever dilute your deck too much, but you do want to have answers to your Rest in Peace and your Deathrite Shaman type effects. And you guys do see Brian's sideboard on the screen with those 3 Revelations. Other than that, you're probably not going to see him sideboard in very many cards besides that. You just have to figure out how many. Again, Cathedral Sanctifier, he has 1 in his main deck to go infinite with. But, do you want multiples of those? Not really. It's not very good against tokens.
Right.
It's better against your mono red deck. Purify the Grave. Good against Lingering Souls. Not much else. Not going to really want that. Appetite for Brains? No. Slaughter Games? No. So you might end up seeing him board in all 3 Ray Revelations just to be able to beat that 1 Rest in Peace, just because he doesn't have to sideboard in a ton of cards.
Yeah, and again, Intangible Virtue's potentially powerful. You would want an answer to that as well. So.
Yeah. Now the question, of course, is taking a look at Brian's deck list is what does he sideboard out if he's going to do that? Because again, this deck is so, finely tuned in what it's trying to do every single game, which is the exact same thing every game. It's not a reactive deck. It's just one strategy that it wants to execute every game. Do you want to sideboard out? This is the situation where I think shaving is something that's probably going to happen. You can shave a Fiend Hunter, maybe. It's a token deck. Fiend Hunter's really good against him. Shave a Hunt Master, maybe. Shave a Cartel Aristocrat. Can you afford to shave any of these pieces like Unburial Rites or, Faithless Looting or Mulch or Grizzly Salvage? That I don't know. That's something that he probably knows, which is why he's gotten so far in the tournament.
To me, the one card that stands out in Brian's list is where I would start to cut is probably Huntmaster of the Fells. Zan's deck is very good at attacking in the air, and because of Intangible Virtue and his own Huntmasters, Zan might just be able to outclass. Like, his Huntmasters are going to be better. Yep. And there's no guarantee the Huntmaster even does anything, because if he's going Lingering Souls, Midnight Haunting, Intangible Virtue, Zan's also got Bonfire of the Damned in his deck. There's a lot of things that make Huntmaster not at its best here. He still may want to keep in a couple copies, but if I were to point to a card in his list that seems like the worst piece of the puzzle here, it would probably be Huntmaster of the Fells.
Okay.
But this is a learning experience for me as well, obviously. This is my first you know, today is my first time really seeing this deck in action, but if I were in Brian's seat right now, I'd probably be cutting out at least 2 Hunt Masters. The rest of Zan's sideboard doesn't really look that impressive to me outside of the Graveyard Hate. I mean, it's a lot of anti-creature stuff, but Brian's not really on that sort of plan. I mean, he obviously has creatures in his deck, but I actually think in this matchup, he's pretty comfortable in comboing out. Again, not under a ton of pressure. Graveyard not really under duress. Hands not under duress. No counter spells. This is a matchup where I think Brian should anticipate being able to combo out, even though he has to play against a little bit of Graveyard Hate.
Sure. You know, not a ton of resistance coming here, but we already have our first result, as we predicted that things would move along pretty quickly here in the top 8, as there are a lot of aggressive decks. Joseph Herrera wins 2-0 over Eddie Walker. Joseph playing Naya Humans, Eddie Walker playing Esper Spirits. So we're going to have at least one Naya Humans deck that's been, you know, doing quite well this weekend, moving on to the quarterfinals. Yep. And apparently he won off a mulligan to 4 game 1. When it's your weekend, it's your weekend.
Talk about being on here. Zan's going to mulligan here. I knew that I recognized Zan from somewhere, and now I pieced it together. We ID'd and all right, and Andrew Snyder in the other bracket quickly 2-0ing the Jund deck.
Yeah. Mono red.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.
Andrew Snyder actually ended up going XO2 through the Swiss as well with his mono red deck, splashing a couple Boros Charms. And he just tore apart Ryan Lee's Jund mid-range deck. So we have mono red Naya Humans through. You know, I thought that this might be one of the faster matches. I guess I was wrong about that.
Yeah, we ID'd in the draft open at the Atlanta Invitational.
Oh, what happened in that draft open?
You and I played in the finals. And you kept some dubious hands.
I got unlucky.
I'll be as polite as I possibly can. Some dubious hands.
I got horrifically unlucky, and you won.
If I was actually commentating on our match, I would have been, Cedric, I think, wants to think about throwing that hand back. I think he can do better.
Is it nice?
It's pretty nice. I look at the trophy sometimes still. It's there. Zan leads off with a Temple Garden off his mulligan. Brian with a Stomping Ground and a Faithless Looting.
He's going to discard Fiend Hunter and an Unburial Rights.
So it's a big test. Zan could really use either one of his 2 Death Parade Shamans or his Rest in Peace. Some of his Graveyard Hate would be excellent here.
You know, what we're probably going to see is we're going to see a Farseeker. He's probably just going to play, you know, like a normal game and just hope he just draws into one of those cards.
Yeah.
I mean, when he has so few ways to interact, you know, he has 3 cards total, you can't just aggressively mulligan for him, you know, like you would a Leyline of the Void or a similar effect. So I think he's just going to try to play a normal game, get his deck online, get his spirits and his Crusade effects, and hope he can just beat him. As you see Rest in Peace on the bottom of the deck. Oh, so close.
At least I'm pretty sure it was Zam. I'm not 100%, but I knew the face was familiar when we had him on camera, so I think that's where it's from. See what Brian has in store for us. Definitely has a bunch of lands in his hand. And this deck is full of good 2-mana plays between Mulch and Farseek and Grizzly Salvage.
Yeah. Turn 2 is there's a lot of things you can do. Is you're going to see a Mulch right now. That's going to turn over an Overgrown Tomb, a Fiend Hunter, a Sun Petal Grove, and a Faithless Looting. So I'll take those 2 lands and I'll conveniently put this flashback card and this Fiend Hunter, which I'd like to have in the graveyard anyway, where it belongs. And Brian doesn't need to discard any cards for the turn, so he is just going to pass back. Zane's going to have to get something going here. Yep. You do see a Garrett Primal Hunter in his hand. You see Temple Garden come and play on tap, so we might be seeing something along the lines of Huntmaster of the Fells, something similar. You're going to see Garrick Relentless.
Yeah.
So that'll start the token engine.
Right, but this is a super slow burn. I mean, with the 2 Faithless Lootings in the graveyard and an Unburial Rights. You know, it's good for you know, for Zan to have gotten on the board here, but this is not a clock fast enough to really break up what Brian's doing. Unless Zan finds either more pressure or one of his graveyard hated cards.
Yeah. And Brian's Cavern of Souls, in case you guys are wondering, is naming Human, of course, for his Human Reanimator deck. There are some situations where he's going to want to name Angel for Angel of Glory's Rise, but this currently is not one of them. You can see Brian taking a look at his hand. It's got it fanned out. He wants to navigate, you know, how am I going to get basically my combo online and basically make sure that I don't die here. Even though he's not underneath a ton of pressure, but you're going to see a Fiend Hunter take care of the Wolf token right away.
And a lot of this has to also do with Brian sort of just trying to pace his Rav duels. He wants to pick his spots to minimize damage and play some stuff tapped, so he's trying to sculpt out the next couple of turns to minimize the number of dual lands he has to play untapped.
Yep. So you're going to see Overgrown 2 coming to play here tapped. You're going to see another Wolf token coming from the Garruk Relentless. And this looks like we're going to see an Intangible Virtue.
It's a combo with tokens.
It is a combo with tokens. And you'll see a Farseek. And what's kind of awkward here for Zan is that, yes, he does have a Garruk Relentless in play, but he also has a Garruk Primal Hunter in his hand. Garruk Primal Hunter being the better of the two Garruks.
Yeah.
And he can't play the other one.
Yeah, but he couldn't pass on turn 4 doing nothing.
Of course. Of course.
But, yeah, less than ideal to have all of your action be legendary creatures.
Yeah. All those Garruks. You see this Farseek resolving here. Zan's going to shuffle up. For Brian, of course, I mean, this isn't a deck that puts a ton of pressure on you. I think that this 4-color tokens deck is more of an aggressive deck that's just more resilient than anything. And its resiliency is part of why it's so good. And, you know, Zan has made it through these rounds thus far, but it does not interact very well with this reanimation strategy. Again, with only having those 3 cards in his sideboard to interact with it. Even a card like Fiend Hunter, which is, you know, a card that's marginal, depending on the matchup, is insane here because it kills tokens for good. As we do see Grizzly salvage.
Wow, there's an embarrassment of riches here for Brian.
The Grizzly Salvage is going to turn over a Clifftop Retreat.
And Brian's face just shrugging the shoulders. And
2 copies of Angel Glory's Rise, Cartel, Aristocrat, and a Huntmaster of the Fells. So the quote-unquote combo is online.
Oh, yeah.
Starting next turn. As far as infinite dudes, he doesn't have the Cathedral Sanctifier for infinite life, but he that's what we call the jackpot.
Yeah, and now, I mean, Zan is like, the Deathrite Shaman does not matter anymore. It's got to be
rest in peace.
It's rest in peace or bust right now.
Yeah. And if he's been sandbagging it, which we know he hasn't, he'd be doing quite the job of it, but it's going to take a top of deck. And Brian is just going to pass back. He could have cast Faithless Looting, but he doesn't have much of a reason to. And Zan's going to draw a card.
Yeah, I guess he wants just backup in case Zan rips rest in peace.
Yep.
He can try to rebuild.
Yep. And we're going to see an attack here for 3 with the Wolf, it looks like. Get in Brian immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll block.
Sure.
They're coming back in a second. Another Wolf token. He just does pass the turn
It's not
back.
goodbye. It's more like see you later.
Yeah. Just one moment. Unless we're missing something here. I can't imagine him not on Burial Rites in that Angel of Glory's Rise. Yeah, pulling the trigger on this, and let the fun begin. The Angel's going to trigger. Going to bring back all the humans. Among them 3 Fiend Hunters. You're going to see a Cartel Aristocrat come back and a Huntmaster of the Fells. You're going to see a lot of stacking of the effects here, Pat.
Here we go. I could never do, I don't know, Mario? From Mario.
Here we go! And you're going to see all the stacking here. And so basically he's going to create an infinite loop of Fiend Hunter, you know, sacking this through the Aristocrat, getting the stuff back, and as you see Brian explaining it with his hands, he's like, I'm going to do this a bunch. And I'm going to make a bunch of guys.
Bunch of life. All right.
And I'm sure that's not the first time Brian's gotten that handshake after the explanation.
Yeah, sure.
Of going, I can't do anything about that.
I mean, we talked. I'm sure this matchup is a nightmare for Zan.
Yeah.
We saw Brad Nelson in round 1 play against the same, obviously a completely different deck, but not much in the way of early pressure, not really much in the way of disruption.
Yeah.
And Zan's is even slower out of the gates than that blue-red-green deck we had on camera.
Yep.
So it's no real surprise to see Brian move on to the semifinals.
Yeah, this is just the nightmare matchup for Zan. Again, this is something that is kind of the fear, right? When you're playing Reanimator deck in these tournaments, is, you know, if people have hate, it's scary. People have Purify the Grave. If people have Deathrite Shaman in the opening turns of the game, if they have Rest in Peace looming in their sideboards, this is scary. If they don't, you're probably going to win the tournament.
Yeah.
And what we have seen so far